One moment, please, Your Worship.
Perfect. Yeah.
You're live, Your Worship.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, Council. I'd like to call this regular council meeting of July 11th, 2023 to order with adoption of the agenda, and that the agenda be adopted as amended to include an in-camera item pursuant to 90.1K of the community charter. Someone want to make that motion for me, please? Councilor Cherry, Councilor Devlin, all in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Adoption of the minutes of the regular council meeting of June 27th. Someone will put that motion on the table for me, please. Councilor Devlin, second by Councilor Roussel. All in favor? Motion's carried. Any business arising from those minutes? Councilor Orlando is frozen, I think. Councilor Orlando, did you have anything business arising? No, all right, thank you. We are going to move on to item 5A, development variance application DVP 2023-006. And Ms. Hartling, do we have a presentation on that?
Yes, Your Worship, there is a presentation if you'd like to see it.
Yes, please.
Just before I start, just want to make sure that the development variance permit is viewable on your screen there.
It is, thank you.
Great. So staff have an application before council today for a development variance permit. The request is to increase the maximum usable floor space of a secondary suite. And this is from 90 square meters to 150 square meters. The application is DVP 2023-006, and the subject property is located at 2297 Airport Way. So the presentation, I'll go over the background information of the property, the proposal details, the staff evaluation, and then follow up with staff recommendation. The subject property is accessed off of Airport Way. It's within the Arrow Heights neighborhood. It's approximately 0.6 acres. It's serviced by municipal water with on-site septic system, and it's developed within an existing single-family dwelling with an attached garage. You can see the existing family dwelling highlighted in the image in front of you there, with the existing garage outlined in purple, and then the proposed addition in yellow. The property is located outside the designated floodplain area and also the environmentally sensitive and hazardous development permit areas. It's surrounded by other residential large 0.5 to 1 acre residential lots on either side, with Airport Way to the north, and then the rear is a wetland area to the south. So just get into the proposal overview. As stated, it's a request for the increase of the maximal usable floor space of a secondary suite from 90 square meters to 150 square meters. The proposal is to renovate the existing attached garage, which you can see in 2 images before you there. On the site plan, it's outlined in orange to be renovated into livable ground floor space for the principal dwelling, and then with a rooftop patio above that for the principal dwelling. And to construct a new 3-car garage for the principal dwelling, which you can see in the side image, and then also with the site plan, and to construct a secondary suite above the garage space, which is connected to the principal dwelling. So it will be one building with a single family dwelling and secondary suite above the garage. The staff are supportive of the requested variance, and as outlined in the report, the secondary suite and the attached garage are designed with the same materials as the principal dwelling and constructed in a manner and style that's compatible with the scale and mass of the surrounding neighborhood. The subject dwelling and the attached secondary suite and garage have a large setback from Airport Way and are also set back and screened from neighboring properties, and staff do not see a negative visual impact on the surrounding neighborhood. The application is supportive of infill housing as its secondary suite addition. It's consistent with the official community plan housing policies, as well as the low density residential land use policies that allow for single family dwelling, 2-family dwellings, 3-family dwelling, 4plexes, and accessory dwelling units where it is feasible, and if the zone allows for that use. So staff recognize, and it's outlined in the report, the province did remove the maximum floor area restriction from the BC Building Code in 2019. And city zoning bylaws, you'll see some municipalities have removed it. And ours still has the maximum size requirement of the 90 square meters. That was added to the zoning bylaw to be in line with the BC Building Code. And it is something that staff will be looking at with the new zoning bylaw rewrite to see if that's something to be removed in its entirety or amended to be in line with the BC Building Code. So currently the restrictions in the zoning bylaw are 40% of the primary dwelling, which the secondary suite does meet that provision, and 90 square meters. So those two are something that staff will be looking at to see if those are to be amended in the new zoning bylaw rewrite. So staff will note that we've received 3 public submissions. The application was sent out to property owners within 100 meters. We received 1 from BC Hydro with no concerns, and then 2 from the neighboring property owner to the east. Just to the east there along Airport Way, with concerns of the size and that it may be operated as short-term rental, and staff can address any questions that council has over those submissions. So staff recommendation is that the development variance permit be issued, and that concludes my presentation.
Great, thanks, Ms. Hartley. So council, can I get someone to put this motion on the table, and then we can ask questions or discuss this? Councilor Devlin.
Move that development's variance permit be issued at 2297 Airport Way for the following variance to zoning bylaw number 2299A, section 5.7.1, accessory dwelling units, secondary suites, to increase the maximum usable floor space of a secondary suite from 90 meters square to 150 meters square.
Seconder for the motion, please. Councilor Stakenhurst. Any questions or discussions on this motion? I know that I just will ask Ms. Hartling, the 2 letters that came were dealing with concern over this secondary suite being used as a short-term rental. And the proponent has stated that it's for family to move in there. Is that correct?
Through your worship, that's the correct proposal. Staff will note that the parameters of variance request is not for the use of a short-term rental. It's for the size of the secondary suite. Short-term rental is not permitted in the zone. So if that was ever a case in the future, that would be a bylaw enforcement issue, but it's not something that is applicable to the variance request. The applicant has outlined that the adult children live on the site and that the parents would be utilizing the secondary suite and have it as a multi-generational home. So they aren't looking at this time to do long-term rentals. Short-term rentals are not even an option for discussion. So that is the intent. I do believe that agents in the room, if there are any questions, however, staff understand that the intent is for a family home.
Great, I appreciate those comments, and yes, I'm aware that that's not what this is in front of us for, but because it was brought up in the letter, I just wanted you to confirm that, so thank you for that. Any other questions from council regarding this motion? I'm definitely supportive of it. I think it's a great proposal and gives housing to families, so I will vote in favor. So I'll now call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. This is unanimous. Thank you. This motion is passed. All right. Thanks, Ms. Hartling.
Thank you.
We'll move on to announcements from the mayor. I just want to say thank you to everybody for the past 10 days, especially for the Canada Day celebrations. Teacher Rosie, for your fire crew, what you've done, Mr. Nato, for you and Ms. McIsaac, and for everything that was done, and Mr. Parliament, and appreciate all of that. And then for the musical ride, that went off very well. And so again, I want to say thank you to everyone that participated and took part, and Mr. Parliament for getting that to come to roll. So appreciate that. So Good thing for all people and well attended and well received. So we're going to move on to item 7, delegations. We have General Manager Mike Copperthwaite, Revelstoke Community Forest Corporation. Mr. Copperthwaite, you want to come forward and do your presentation to council? Much appreciated. Come on up.
Is this
Yep.
So you just
you to the mayor and council for inviting me here today. I'm Mike Copperthwaite. I'm the general manager of the Revelstoke Community Forest Corporation. I've got a short presentation I'll do, and then wide open to any questions that you guys might have.
Okay, thanks, Mike.
So I won't go into the history very long, but this is our 30th year of existence. We were created in 1993, and back in the 90s, there was a lot of issues going on in this region with a bit of a downturn in the forest industry. The community saw a lot of logs leaving the community and no benefits coming to the town, and some of the mills weren't getting any logs. So bit of a referendum, the community, Jeff Battersby was the mayor at the time, and they pushed hard with the provincial government, and a lot of stuff happened. And anyways, the community had the opportunity to purchase a portion of a tree farm license. So that's what happened, $3.5 million. The city spent half of that from city funds, half from community partners. So Down East Sawmills, Cascade Sawmills, and Joe Kozak Sawmills. So at the end of the day, a TFL was purchased. So 30 years later, where are we at? Well, RCFC is in excellent shape. We are 100% debt free. We just finished our 2023 fiscal year, which will turn out to be, so far it's unofficial. We don't have our official numbers yet, but it's probably going to be the best year we've ever had, somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.5 million profit. I went back over the last 10 years, and we've been profitable every year in the last 10 years with an average of about $450,000 per year. Everything. So we're doing quite well that way. Last year, we actually contributed $2 million to stumpage to the Crown, which that's a huge number for us. We're usually in that $400,000 or $500,000 range, so that's significant. We logged 70,000 cubic meters. Our cut's 80, so we're a little under what we could cut. And then I've also thrown in there, you can see what 14 million on the coast, 26 million in the northern interior, 19 million in the southern interior, for a total of 60. So RCFC, we only cut about 0.1% of the provincial allowable annual cut. So we are, on the scheme of things, very small, but significant. So our current issues, and this was something I think Evan asked me to touch on, was so what's happening? Well, you know, historically we've done well. We've had lots of issues over the years that we've managed through. Our current issues are mountain caribou. Again, we've dealt with this over the last 20 years. We've over some of those years, we've lost some of our operable ground that we would be allowed to normally operate on. It's been protected for mountain caribou. And we're sort of going through this process again right now. And there is going to be more mountain caribou habitat protection. We know that's going to come. We just don't know when, where, and how much. A couple of years ago, you probably all saw the news. The provincial government started down this path of protecting old growth forests. Deferring them is what they've called them, so that it's not legal. They're deferred voluntarily, and RCFC has definitely embraced what we could there. We've stayed away from some of the areas. It's a big impact to RCFC. It's if we look at it, we're probably right away it was about a 40% hit to us of our operable land base, and because of the way it was distributed, it's even a greater hit just because it's fragmented up the land base. So it's more expensive and more difficult to get to some of the areas that we are allowed to operate. So it's a big issue for us. We're hoping to work through this with the government. It was supposed to be a 2-year deferral. That's come and gone, and we're still nowhere closer to getting any plans worked out with government and First Nations. And that's my next point, is the whole First Nations reconciliation that the provincial government is committed to. That is kind of slowing down some of these processes from happening. In our area, we have 13 bands that overlap on our TFL that we have to kind of work with and manage with. So that makes anything happening quickly somewhat difficult. So that's definitely a concern. And, of recent in the last year or two, we've definitely seen it. There's groups there that are definitely pushing the negative aspects of forestry in this community. And so we're just trying to make sure proper good messaging gets out. So we're working on those things. The biggest issue, I guess I would say for us right now, is the unknown with the land base. It's hard to make investment decisions for RCFC itself and to try and get our contractors to commit to certain investments as well, because of the risk of, will they be able to operate in, a piece of equipment ranges anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million. Right? And they generally need 5 or 6 different pieces of equipment. So it's there's a lot of risk there. So uncertainty is not our friend. So I threw this one in because this one's been on lots of newspapers stuff, and this is one of our cut blocks in the Downey. And Eddie Patrician there is somebody that we deal with Wildsight, and he's a good guy. I don't mind Eddie, but but they definitely are trying to push like clear cuts are ugly, and they are. I mean, we're not trying to deny that, but what they won't show you is so there's that clear cut in the, whatever this would be, your left. Down below is just, the cut block adjacent to it that's like 10 years old, all greened up, looks pretty good. The other forest next to it is a 48-year-old plantation. So that's, they're just showing them the ugly, and they're not helping anybody understand what the rest of the forest becomes. So we need to talk more about just clear cuts. We got to talk about the whole forest ecosystem and the biodiversity that's created. So here's another picture again. It's a little bit older forest. This one's about 70 years old, and you can see the old remnants of some of the old stumps. But you walk through this forest, and I've taken a lot of people through it, and to them it feels almost old growth, and it's far from that age. But in another 20 years, it's going to be as large as the trees that were probably harvested there. So we can and will grow old growth, maybe not by age, but definitely by attributes. And this is just a quick one to say that, you know, we're shifting, there's a transition in the forest industry. And RCFC is full in on this, in this area, we're leading the way. So intensive silviculture is, a licensee has an obligation to get a stand back to what they call free growing. That takes about 15, 20 years. And then the obligation to do anything more with that is with the government, and nothing really happens after that point. So in this picture here on your left is a stand of trees that we went in the 90s, and we did something that we call pre-commercial thinning, where we just took out some of those smaller trees, left them on the forest floor, but just created more of a better spacing in the stand. So kind of on your screen to the right is this part of the block that didn't get treated. So you can sort of visually see the difference between those two stands, where when you do some intensive silviculture versus not doing it, you know, you're creating a healthier forest. It's more resilient, less prone to fires, and you put more volume on the trees that are remaining, and you can ensure that you're creating a diverse forest there. So we've been doing some of that. This is something that we've just done here recently. It's a thinning. And again, on the left is after the treatment, and on the right is before the treatment. So you can see how dense that was. Wasn't really much growing underneath it. It was quite dark when you went into it. So we've gone in and spaced it out, and the trees that were there that we took out, we were able to sell and make some money on. So that was a great thing for us. And I think the next one here, yeah, I'll just show you what kind of what it looks like when we're in there. So that's something that nobody else in this area has been doing. This is commercial thinning. This fella here actually is from Clearwater. We had to bring him in because nobody in this area has this kind of equipment. He also has another, so what he does there is we give him specs on certain trees have to be bucked to certain lengths, and then he does that in the forest. He has another machine that comes by. It's called a forwarder. And it comes in and it picks it up and puts it on its bunks and drives it out. And after, and we've taken some of the RCFC board, and Gary's are on the board, and out to it. And you can't even tell that there is a piece of equipment in there. It's pretty neat. We'd love to get somebody local to do that. We've talked to contractors and they're somewhat willing, but they want a bit of a commitment about how much volume there would be available. And at this point, we're a little unsure. So, but it's the wave of the future. And like I say, RCFC is really investing in this heavily. So we'd like to see it go, and we're looking forward to doing more of this. And I think from a society point of view, it looks pretty good. It maybe looks a little raw at first, but within a year, you don't see any of the branches and debris. It all kind of just erodes back into the soil, and you know, people sometimes don't even realize we've harvested. And that's that one. So, you know, another thing that you might be hearing about in the news, and we're all committed to doing this too, is more of a, we call it forest landscape planning. That's the big push from the federal or the provincial government. And it's the proper way we have to start doing things. We have to looking at our land base, a more holistic point of view. So that's something that's we've been pushing the government to try and do in Revelstoke. Katrine Conroy committed to doing it years ago, and we're still haven't quite got a commitment on anybody's part to do it. So but that's where we need to go here. And I think together, the community, the licensees, the First Nations, we can build a plan that works for everybody. And finally, I'll just end with, some of the stuff that we need in Revelstoke. So we need to maintain a diverse economy. Like that's one thing that in my 30 years of living here, I've noticed is, we always are able to be healthy here because we're not just reliant on a industry, right? We've got CP, the parks, forest industry, tourism. You don't want to lose any of those. It's what keeps you healthy. There's a risk right now to forestry if everything negative happens, that could happen. I could see RCFC not surviving, but we're optimistic that's not the case. Like I said, we have 13 First Nations that we have to deal with, and we're a bit challenged to know which one we should, or all of them. I don't think we can engage with all of them, but we definitely need to engage with some of them. So we're going to need to do some work there. We just need to get this transition thing happening, and we need support of government, right? We need them to help commit to how we are going to transition. They haven't come up with any solutions yet, and they've implemented stuff without any transition solutions, which was part of the old growth process that was supposed to happen. So anyways, we need this all to happen sooner or later. I don't want to go away with the negative feeling, but there are challenges, but RCFC is willing, we're able to face them, and we've got lots of great ideas, and I think we just got to get the right people to the table, and we'll make it all happen. So that's the end of the presentation. I know, Evan, you asked me to comment a little bit on RCEC and
sort of what the relationship is between RCEC and RCFC and just to better understand it.
Well, I guess historically, I'll just say at the time RCEC was created, the chair of our board was Jeff Battersby, and it was a passion of Jeff's to get RCEC going. So he leveraged some of RCFC to do that. So RCFC provided, some seed money. Well, I think $1.2 million to get going at, we had provided them accounting services for a while. We gave them some office space in our office, that sort of thing. Of late, in the last 3 or 4 years, we haven't worked very closely at all with RCEC. So other than that, I don't really know their challenges. Sorry, I can't say too much more about them without.
Well, thanks, Mike. Any questions from council for Mike? Councilor Stickners.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just through the chair to Mr. Copperwaite, in regards to the forest fires that we're seeing on the news every day, what kind of a role does forestry and in particular RCFC, what kind of a role can you guys play in maybe minimizing or mitigating some of the risks that Revelstoke may face?
Mm-hmm. So it's a good question. Our tenure is that's where we're allowed to operate.
Okay.
So if there's concern around the community, for sure there's other people that are involved, like BC Timber Sales it's got most of the tenure in and around the community. So, but they have done work. They've done some fire mitigation projects around McPherson and stuff like that. As far as our tenure goes, we definitely consider those things, and we use fire as a tool ourselves. We've done broadcast burning to try and create large swaths of less risky areas to burn.
Okay.
So we do some of that, and this thinning process that I talked about us doing, that's similar to a fire mitigation process where you're taking away some of those ladder fuels that if you get a fire and then it can get up into the crowns, that makes for a worse fire. So by taking out some of that smaller dead material, you reduce the risk. So we're doing that as well. But as far as right around the community, we've helped write some of the prescriptions voluntarily for Cindy Pierce had a project where she was doing some of that. So we went out and wrote the prescriptions, but as far as doing the actual work, hasn't been us.
Thank you.
But Mike, we've been in the forest and Mike and Kevin have seen forest fires, so they've reported them. So because they're in the field all the time, it's saved some of our forests. So that's definitely an attention.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Yeah.
Appreciate it. So any other questions? Seeing none, thanks, Mike. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, council, we're going to move on to item 9A, fees and charges amendment bylaw 2357, pre-application meeting fees. So someone want to put that motion on the table and then we can discuss it. And so we sound.
I move that fees and charges amendment bylaw number 2357 be adopted.
Second for the motion, Councillor Cherry, discussion on the motion. Any comments? Mr. Simon, this is for a fee for pre-application second meeting and above, is that correct?
Through your worship, that is correct. There would be no fee for the first meeting. It's just for proponents that require more than one meeting.
Great, appreciate that. Any other comments or questions from council? Seeing none, I'll call a question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to item B. Someone want to put that motion on the table, number 1? Councillor Devlin?
I move that Growing Communities Reserve Fund bylaw number 2361 be adopted.
Seconder for the motion, please. Councillor Cherry, discussion on this motion. Ms. Moore, do you want to make any comment?
Through your worship, no comments from me. These are the same reserve bylaws that came forward for first 3 readings last council meeting, and this reserve is required for the grants provided from the province.
Great, thank you. All right, seeing no questions, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion's carried unanimously. Item number 2, please. Councillor Cherry?
That the Arena Redevelopment Project Capital Reserve Fund bylaw number 2360 be adopted.
Seconder for the motion, Councillor Devlin. Discussion on this motion. This is basically having a place to put those funds. Is that correct, Ms. Moore?
Through your worship, that is correct.
All right. Any other questions or concerns from council? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No, motion's carried unanimously. Item number 3. Councillor Stapenhurst?
I move that the Affordable Housing Reserve Fund bylaw number 2359 be adopted.
Seconder for that, Councillor Lucelle. Discussion on this motion. Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
No, motion's carried unanimously. All right, thank you. Moving on to item C, planning and development approvals procedure bylaw. Someone want to put that on for me? Councillor Cherry?
That development approval procedures bylaw number 2356 be adopted.
Okay. Seconder for that. Oh, did we miss 2097?
I don't see that on.
Your worship, that was corrected.
Okay, pardon me. All right. Thank you. Seconder for that motion? Councillor Devlin. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No, motion's carried unanimously. Moving on to D. Someone want to put that on? Councillor Devlin.
Move that delegation amendment bylaw number 2358 be adopted.
Seconder for that motion, please. Councillor Lucelle. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No, motion's carried. Thank you. Moving on to item 10A, unfinished business, airport water supply upgrade. So do we want any explanation for this before we go into it, or just put it on? Mr. Perlman?
I can certainly talk about that. So if council recalls, back in May, we were trying to find a solution, working with our partner CSRD to bring water to the airport. And it was suggested that originally that Area B would take monies out of Community Works Fund, the old gas tax fund, and the city of Revelstoke would take monies out of the EOF fund. Then there was concern from Area B that, well, because they're part of EOF, in essence, they would be contributing twice to the project. One through a pot of gas tax money and the other through the rural part of EOF. And staff were able to find a new funding source where the CSRD would still commit to providing, I believe the total cost, Steve, was $100,000.
The city portion, yes.
Yeah, so the CSRD would contribute 100 and the city would contribute 100. So the CSRD would contribute 100 out of the Community Works Fund, which is the gas tax fund, and that the city would contribute $100,000 out of, I don't have it in front of me, is it Redup, thank you. In other words, leaving EOF entirely alone and not compromising any of the projects that are on the table, current and future, that require EOF funds. And so once again, kudos to staff for coming up with this solution. This is supported by the CSRD. And so we're asking, Mr. Mayor, that council rescind the May 19th arrangement and that we make a recommendation under the following financial scenario: 100,000 from CSRD, 100,000 from the city, with the two sources identified in the resolution.
All right. Thank you. Okay, someone put that motion on the table for me, please. Councilor Devlin.
I move that the following May 9th, 2023 resolution be rescinded, that the expenditure of up to $100,000 to fund the city portion for upgrading the water main to airport in support of the Ministry of Forests Revelstoke Fire Base be approved, and that a recommendation be forwarded to the Columbia Shuswap Regional District CSRD Board of Directors that up to $100,000 be allocated from the Economic Opportunity Fund for the city portion of this water main replacement, subject to an equal contribution from the CSRD.
Seconder for that motion, please. Councilor Cherry. Any further discussion on the motion?
Mayor Souls, I have a question.
All right, Councilor Palmer.
Yeah, and sorry, there's a power outage where I am, so that's why I'm not very visible, I guess. This motion that is rescinding that entire amount is the that was the original motion. So all we're doing is rescinding there's no additional actions in this motion. I think that's the case, but I just want to make sure.
Comment, Mr. Palmer.
Cindy?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Palmer?
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No, motion's carried. Thank you. Moving on to 11A, City Housing Lease Agreement. Someone want to put that motion on the table for me, please? Councilor Devlin.
Move that notice be given of the city's intention to dispose of an interest in a portion of land located at 1406 First Street West, be a lease agreement to J. Babcock for a 1-year term for the sum of $25,200.
Seconder for the motion, please. Councilor Stapleton. So this basically is a house the city owns, and we're going to lease it to one of our staff members for a full year at that rate. Any comments or discussion? Seeing none? All those in
Mayor
favor?
Souls?
Oh, go ahead. Councilor
Mayor Souls?
Councilor
Can you-
Palmer.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, just a couple of questions. So I don't recall seeing these short-term leases coming before council. So it's it feels a little bit more operational to me. It's just a comment. There's no question there on it. But we have a number of properties that we lend or lease out over a period of time. So the courthouse, and if it's a 5-year lease, then there would be some requirement for it coming to council. But I'm just, and I guess I get a little bit concerned about the length of the vacancies. So I'm just wondering, again, not asking for any answers at this point, but wondering how we're managing these properties to make sure that they are occupied to the maximum potential. Essentially in this case, we've had a unit that's been available in this high demand area. So those are just a few comments. I'm not opposed to the motion as it reads. So those are just comments for staff to note, I guess.
All right, thank you, appreciate that. Councillor Steveners, do you have a question?
Sure, I'll echo the comments made by Councillor Palmer. I do have some concerns about the management of properties, the current leases, the lack of kind of full information. So we know that this property sat vacant for a year. Prior to that, it went under some renovations. We don't really know the cost. In my opinion, the current lease it's a great deal, and I'm fully supportive of providing it. But it's at a cost, and I think it's below market rate. So there's just some concerns that I wanted to echo, and then maybe just add to the point of maybe reviewing how we're managing all of these properties and assets. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Great, appreciate the comments. We'll let staff deal with that, and my feeling there is a positive to this when it's our staff that's going in. It's a way to attract our staff. But I'll leave it at that. Any other questions? Councilor Chair.
Just for clarification, is this the 3-bedroom or the 2-bedroom unit? I did not notice that.
This is, the Farwell house.
It's 2 suites though, correct?
Yeah, they're upstairs. So there's a 3-bedroom suite upstairs. There's a 2-bedroom suite downstairs.
Okay.
Total, yeah, sorry.
This is the 3-bedroom?
Yes, upstairs. Total cost of renovation is roughly $150,000. It's been sitting empty for roughly a year. And we had a chance to put an existing employee at what we consider fair market rent, albeit it's 3-4 years old. And so that's what is before you. But the basement 2-bedroom suite remains vacant. And I believe the market rent is roughly $1,800, something like that. That remains vacant. And this is an asset the city owns.
Okay. Any other comments or concerns? Councillor Orlando.
Hi, just a question for clarification. As was just mentioned a minute ago, it was under renovation for quite a bit. Was it actually vacant for a year? It seems like there was work being done.
Yeah, I'm not sure it was vacant during that whole time, Councillor,
Right,
but
not the whole time.
definitely a portion of that, and you're right, was under renovation for a while. All right, Councillor Steveners.
Maybe one last comment, sir. Maybe we could explore in the future how these funds are being allocated, potentially taking the rents, putting them back into the Affordable Housing Reserve Fund or something to that extent, to further, supply funding for housing initiatives that the city undertakes.
Okay, that's something that staff can look at as well. Ms. Moore, you have your hand up?
Through your worship, I just want to note that in the long-term financial plan, we do budget for rental income from the residential properties that we own, and it flows through to the base budget. So, and helps reduce the tax impact. So it is accounted for.
All right, appreciate that. All right, any further comments or questions? All those in favor? Opposed? No, motion's carried. Thank you. All right, moving on to item 11B, heritage alteration permit. Someone want to put that on the table, and then if we have questions, Mr. Simon and Ms. Hartman can answer. Councilor Chair.
Move that heritage alteration permit HAP 2023-004 be issued at 209 3rd Street East as presented in the package.
Okay, and just for the design of a new accessory dwelling unit, carriage suite. Seconder for that motion, please. Councillor Stapenhurst. Ms. Hartling, do you have anything that you would like to state, or you just want to answer questions?
Through your worship, I can answer questions, or I do have a presentation as well.
All right, we'll let you do your presentation, please.
And can you see that in front of your screen there?
Yes, we can, thank you.
So the application before you today is a heritage alteration permit to construct an accessory dwelling unit within the Revelstoke Station Heritage Conservation Area, so specifically a carriage suite. This is for 209 3rd Street East under HAP 2023-004. So let's go over the background information, the proposal overview, staff evaluation, and then end with staff recommendation. Just the background property details. The subject property is approximately 350 square meters. It's 2.5 stories. It was built in 1910, and the property currently has a single family dwelling with a shed in the backyard. It's accessed from 3rd Street to the principal dwelling and serviced by community water and sewer. It's located within the central Revelstoke neighborhood and in the Heritage Conservation Area. Neighboring properties are primarily single family dwellings. They're zoned single and 2-family residential. So the application is proposing a 1-bedroom carriage suite. You'll see in front of you there the site layout. So the new accessory dwelling unit with the garage is to be located at the side rear yard behind the principal building and accessed off the lane. You'll see in the side right image there the location off the lane of the carriage suite. The carriage suite does meet setbacks with the stairs and deck within allowable projections, and all the mature existing trees are to remain on the property. You'll see another image there in front of you. The one to the left is from the 3rd Street, just showing a rendering of the existing house and how much you'll see of the proposed carriage suite in behind. And then the other rendering is from the alleyway looking at the proposed carriage suite with the house in behind. So the proposed building, it's to include living space on the 2nd floor, garage 1st floor, steeply pitched gable roof with eaves, height to align with the existing house. All aspects of the carriage suite will match the existing house with white windows, engineered treated wood with the same matching color, engineered treated wood panel trim to match the existing color. The metal roof will match the existing house. The exterior wood stairway with wood railing will match the existing house with also the timber details at the posts to match the existing house. And there will be addition of fir panel exterior accents on the west and east side of the building. You can see that down in the 2 bottom renderings there. And then aluminum wood garage door. You'll also see the subject property image just in the showing the existing coloring and form and character, and then of the carriage suites renderings. So I won't go into great detail here. This is all included in the staff report, but with site layout, as I noted, mature trees will be retained, and the size, location of the suite is in line with the guidelines. For building features and building styles, it is reflecting and matching the primary principal dwelling. I will note that the proposed design has since been revised after the Heritage Advisory Commission provided comments at the May 15th meeting. You'll see the original design proposal in the report in here in front of you was quite different, and there was a lot of comments over the design parameters in the Revelstoke Station Heritage Conservation Area. The applicant owner took those into consideration and submitted the current design that is more reflective and complementary to these design principles. The staff recommend that the heritage alteration permit for the new design of an accessory dwelling unit be issued.
Thank you, Ms. Hartling. Any comments or questions from council? Councilor Chair.
Thanks, Your Worship. I just want to make a comment. I think that the designer and the owner have done a very good job at designing this house to meet all of the requirements, including what was given as feedback from the Heritage Commission.
Great, appreciate that comment. I like this. It's in the downtown core and it's a nice way of using up space on a fairly small lot. So that's good. Any other comments or questions? Councilor Staples?
Yeah, I think it's, just to echo what we've heard so far on the table, I think it's a great use of a lot when we look at infill density. I think this is exactly what we kind of need in Revelstoke to address some of our immediate housing needs. The other thing that I'd like to add is, I think with this applicant, I think it's great to see that the mature landscaping is going to be maintained. And I'd like to, hopefully we can, moving forward, we can look at more environmental considerations when we look at carriage houses. Maybe encourage applicants to utilize best practices when it comes to collecting rainwater and stormwater runoff from driveways, looking at permeable bulk driveways and things of that nature. So thank you very much.
Appreciate that. Councilor Orlando. Councilor Orlando? You have your hand up?
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Your Worship. Can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead. He's frozen.
Mayor Souls,
Yes, go ahead, Councilor Palmer.
maybe just while Councillor Orlando's making his connection, I had to change venues here. So I did miss little pieces of the presentation, but I did read the report. So I just wanted to make a point and just make sure this is correct. This resolution is not about whether a secondary suite is permitted or not. That's permitted through our zoning bylaw. That was a change that was made previously. So this is to ensure that the heritage components of buildings that are there are conducive to the intent of the heritage protection area. And so I just wanted to make that point and make sure that that I'm not in error in that sense. We're not talking about whether the suite is permitted or not. It's basically on the alterations of the heritage protection area.
Yeah, you're correct. Comment, Ms. Farley?
Through your worship, yeah, that's correct. It's primarily because the dwelling is within the heritage conservation area. Any new additions or alterations require a heritage alteration permit for the design to be in line with the design guidelines and reflective of that streetscape and massing.
Great, thank you. Councilor Orlando, you want to give that a try again?
Sure, Your Worship. Can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to keep my video off if that's all right from here on in, because obviously I cut out there when I went to talk last time, and it seems to be better with video. I only missed a few seconds and got right back in. I just had one question about this. Is this one of the alleyways that is plowed by the city or not?
Comment on that, Ms. Hartley?
Yeah, through your worship, the alleyway is plowed by the city.
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Any further comments or questions? All those in favor? Opposed? No, motion's carried. Thank you. Moving on to item C, number 1. Does someone want to put that motion on the table for me, please? Councilor Lucelle?
I move that council policy DS25, affordable housing reserve and online accommodation platform fund policy be approved.
Seconder for the motion, please. Councilor Stapenhurst. Any discussion on that motion? Councilor Stapenhurst.
I'd just like to make the comment that it would have been nice to have seen the policy. I see it's written that it's intended to outline the process for nonprofit organizations. I would have liked to have seen that expanded to include mission-based organizations, merely for the fact that I think nonprofits are perhaps at capacity, and with the demand for housing, I think we could use an all-hands-on-deck approach. And the more people contributing to housing, the better, especially if they would meet those 2 criteria. Thank you.
All right. Any other comments or questions from council? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? No, motion's carried. Item number 2. Councilor Lucio,
I move that council policy DS 26 municipal land disposition for affordable housing policy be approved.
seconder for that motion, please, Councilor Devlin. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? No motions carried. Moving on to item D, subdivision application. There is a motion on online. I don't have that motion in my written stuff. Is there someone who wants to put that motion on the table for me, please? Councilor Devlin?
Move that the request under subject subdivision application to exempt the minimum frontage requirements specified in section 5112 of the Local Government Act be approved at 705 8th Street. Bunch of bracket stuff. Yeah, it's kind of a little messy here, but I think we're going with lying southeast of the line, joining the point on the northeasterly boundary thereof 100 feet distant from the most northerly corner of the point at the southwesterly boundary 50 feet distant from the most westerly corner of said lot.
Somebody get out their tape measure. Someone want to second that motion, please? Councilor Lucio. So that is definitely a lot that is 2 or 3 houses up the street from me, and I'm definitely supportive of this. There's a problem with our existing feet across frontage. Is that what it is, Councilor? I mean, Mr. Simon.
Through your worship, Ms. Hartling is online as it's her file, but yeah,
okay.
certainly essentially has to do with under the Local Government Act, you must have 10% of the perimeter of the lot fronting onto a public roadway. And if it doesn't, then council needs to authorize a waiver. Now, this is on the agenda for council to consider today. We are requesting a decision from council, but I do want to know with the amendment to the delegation bylaw that council just passed, that decision would now be made by our subdivision approving officer in the future. Not anything to worry about for this one. We still need council to make a decision, but just be aware that you won't be seeing these in the future, as it is quite a technical analysis rather than a decision that council needs to make.
Great. So Ms. Hartling, do you have any comments or regarding this?
No, I think that covers it off. It's a request from 10%, which is the requirement, to 8.7%. So it is minor. The approving officer supports it. And as Mr. Simon noted, this will be a technical analysis with a subdivision that the approving officer can review case by case.
Great. All right. And I'm definitely supportive of this, and knowing the lot and the way they're going to be able to subdivide that and utilize, it's a very deep lot, and use the space in behind for further housing, something that I was hoping we could have done about 20 years ago when I had a piece of property. And anyway, that's water under the bridge, and I'm definitely supportive of this as we go forward. Any comments or questions from council regarding this? Seeing none.
Mayor Souls.
Go ahead, Councilor Palmer.
Thank you, Mayor Souls. Yeah, just some comments. I really had to give this a little bit of thought, and also with the delegation bylaw. And I remember a similar one, different in some ways, but a panhandle lot that was developed. There wasn't, I don't think there was a strata in that case. But what this is doing that I think is valuable to be aware of, I'll be supportive of the motion just for clarity, but is as we start to densify these larger lots and looking for creative ways of doing that, there is going to be cumulative impacts. So in this particular one, now we're going to have more traffic going on to 4th. There's issues on how, in this case would be stratas, how they're doing snow removal, where's that snow going? And then as you have more and more of these kind of things, when we densify, infill essentially, there is implications. I think back to 20 years ago when these kind of subdivisions were frowned upon or not acceptable in some communities. But what's on the good side of this is the densification, so we don't have the urban sprawl or protecting green zones in other areas. And yet there will be implications, and it is a change in our town core as to what that looks like as we do more and more densification within the city. Those are just a few comments. Thank you, Mayor Souls.
Great, thank you. Any other comments or questions from council? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? No, motion's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Hartling. All right, moving on to item E, school safety project costs. So any comments, Ms. Moore, before I put the motion on the table?
Through your worship, I'll just comment and emphasize that the Community Building Fund, which is formerly the Community Works Gas Tax Fund, was meant to last for 10 years, and we're coming up to the end of that program in 2024 with the federal government. It may be extended. However, at the moment, we're not sure, and they're expecting us to spend our funds by the end of 2024.
All right, thank you for that. Okay, someone want to put this motion on the table? Council Chair.
Move that staff amend the 2023-2037 long-term financial plan bylaw to update the school safety project to include $600,000 in funding from the Community Building Fund, in addition to the original $1.5 million budget funded from internal reserves.
Seconder for that motion, please. Councilor Lusal. Any further discussion on this? I think Ms. Moore was quite clear as to the reasoning for this. So I'm definitely supportive of us moving forward. Councilor Orlando, you have your hand up.
Your worship, thank you. Just a question regarding the breakdown of the 1.5 million budget funded from internal reserves. If I could just ask for a bit more clarity on the source of that 1.5 million, specifically our development cost charges contributing to that reserve.
Any comment, Ms. Moore?
Through your worship, in response to Councillor Orlando, no, there are no DCCs funding this project specifically. It was not identified as a growth project in our current DCC bylaw. It is currently being funded as a combination from the Land Sale Reserve Fund, which legislatively can be used for various capital projects, and from the Transportation Infrastructure Reserve Fund.
Answer your question, Councillor.
Yes, your worship. That does. I just had a quick follow-up, just seeking some background that I may have missed. At one point, the previous council was considering borrowing bylaw to pay for this project. And it's my understanding because of this that we're taking a different direction. I'm just trying to understand why things have changed.
Ms. Moore?
Through your worship, in response to Councillor Orlando, my understanding is that initially there were not enough reserve funds to cover the entire cost of the original scope of the project, which was at the time around $2.3 million. This was estimated out for us in 2021 by engineer estimates. And since then, costs have inflated significantly. In the last budget cycle, we reduced the scope of the project, which I believe Mr. Black took to the the infrastructure committee, and the scope was reduced to include only one sidewalk on one side of the street for both elementary schools instead of both sides of the street. And with the reduced scope, we estimated what the budget would be based off of the original engineer's estimate and came to 1.5 million, and we're able to fund it debt-free to try and save space for other larger capital projects that we are anticipating coming forward in the future that may require debt, for example, the arena. And since then, the contractor has come back with new estimates to the engineering staff. And these estimates are that the reduced scope will be $2.3 million. And Engineering and Mr. Black have found some synergies with the current sewer capital projects where in the areas that are being constructed that they can provide some sewer construction at the same time and use those budget items. However, there's still a shortfall of $500,000 to $600,000 for this project based off of the current contractor estimates. And if council does not approve this motion to use the community building fund for this project, we would need to look at option 2 or 3, which is to reduce the scope again, which Mr. Black can speak to if that is possible, or to not proceed with the project.
Great, thank you. Claire, is that clear for you, Councillor Lano?
Your worship, yes, thank you. And thanks to Director Moore for providing that clarification. Just a comment, your worship. I think I want to keep my streak going at council meetings, mentioning the development cost charges at every meeting as possible. I'm not going to bug staff for an update on that because I've done that a couple times already, but I think having the updated bylaw for me is a really real priority, because in situations like this it could be applied, whereas now it can't. So that's what it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that. Appreciate that. All right. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? No. Motion's carried. We're going on to item F, Arena project. I just want to say, Ms. Moore, before you go, thank you for having the information to answer the questions. Appreciate that.
You're very welcome.
Moving on to the Arena project. Any presentation, Mr. Nato, before I put the motion on the table?
Yes, Your Worship. I have Katie Hamilton online with us. She is the consultant we engaged for phase 1 of the process, and she will be doing a presentation to summarize the public engagement sessions we had.
All right, thank you. Welcome, Katie. The floor is yours.
I'll share screen here. There we go. Can council see that?
Not the answer you wanted, right?
No, I can't. Can you see? Is the slideshow there?
Nope.
Nope.
Okay, let's try again.
There we go.
There we go. We just had to go to space.
You've nailed it. Thanks.
The space for a minute. Well, thank you very much. It's lovely to see you all, and I'm really pleased to be here today to share the summary of results from the phase 1 consultation around planning for the future of the Revelstoke Forum and Curling Club. I was here last in March in front of council, and with the support of Lori and team outlined a 6-week public engagement process that would be undertaken to hear the community's thoughts about potential options for the future of the forum and the Curling Club. And at that time, the plan really was designed to raise community awareness of the need to plan for the future and to generate early dialogue early in the process that can inform those options and a path forward. Multi-channel engagement process offering a blend of in-person and online opportunities was blessed by council at that time. And fast forward a couple of months later, it resulted in over 450 people providing input into the process. Clear and transparent process is foundational to effective and meaningful engagement, and somewhat of a simple process, but we were able to follow exactly as we had outlined to council in late March. We launched phase one, sort of a soft launch during the Cyclone Taylor tournament, raising awareness of the upcoming opportunities, with a more formal launch after the tournament had ended the following week, and an active engagement period from April 18th to the end of May of this year. And here we are today with a What We Heard summary, reporting out and concluding on phase one. We had a couple of objectives for this phase, and really they centered around two things. And one was increasing the awareness and understanding around the need to plan for the future, the current condition of the facility, the different considerations on the city's part, some of the recent consultation that's occurred related to recreational opportunities and community amenities within the community. And then the second sort of main objective really being around providing a variety of opportunities for the public to participate, recognizing everyone has different needs and different information needs when doing consultation, but also from the city's perspective there's a lot of intelligence in the community that's needed to help inform this conversation going forward. And so wanting to gauge public and stakeholder perceptions around what's important, what's top of mind when proceeding with this process, and that's what we set out to do. A number of activities over the 6-week period. As I said, sort of a soft launch at Cyclone Taylor, which was a great opportunity for those who are in the arena and thinking about the arena and maybe more familiar, but not necessarily the broader community. So a good opportunity to start the conversation and raise awareness of what's to come. A Talk Revelstoke website was established as sort of the main center point for information and the online survey. A media release was distributed, which generated some media stories and interviews. Posters were distributed throughout the city. Information through social media and the e-newsletter sent out routinely over those 6 weeks. Some advertising to promote both the survey and the open house opportunity, the survey itself, and then 2 days of stakeholder meetings, which was Lori and I meeting with, I think, 9 different community groups with a high interest in the arena and curling club facilities. And then we took those same display boards that we had used at the open house on May the 4th, and we displayed those in the community center for a couple of weeks as an additional opportunity to inform and engage the community. In terms of numbers, over 450 people participated actively in providing input into the process. There were 21 contributors online in terms of asking questions, seeking clarification, and posing ideas. 69 people attended the open house and the guided arena tours that were offered through the evening. There were 9 stakeholder meetings with 25 people in attendance, over 1,000 website visits, and nearly 1,000 views on social media platforms, just on the city's channels themselves. The key topics we set out to sort of gauge or understand were really what are the top of mind considerations as we plan for the future of the forum. When talking to stakeholder groups, how does the forum and the curling club relate to their strategic priorities as they plan for the future as well? We really wanted to assess what elements of the current forum people feel are the most challenging and they would like to see addressed in any future option, whether that's a roof replacement or a new facility. What elements of the current facility do they value the most? And what are their thoughts about potentially replacing the roof, in particular in light of detailed information provided to them? And then we wanted to talk about the potential for a new facility. So, what excites them about the potential, what concerns might they have, and what amenities are they most interested in? And then with sort of a future orientation, we also wanted to ask how we could keep them informed and engaged in future phases of the process. So in terms of who we heard from, there were sort of 3 main inputs into the process, and one was the online survey. There were about 392 respondents. 99%, all but 3 people who responded indicated they do live in the city of Revelstoke. A mix of homeowners and renters, 81% homeowners, 19% renters, 63% had children, and 25% indicated owning a business. You'll also see on the right a good broad representation in terms of neighborhood residents as well as age, sort of broad representation across the community. 9 stakeholder groups we met with, everyone from Revelstoke Grizzlies, minor hockey, roller derby society, figure skating club, arena staff who are, keeping the arena running and in good shape on the day-to-day and interacting with all of the users, adult recreational users, the curling club, Chamber of Commerce, and Destination Revelstoke. And then we had the open house and guided site tours where we had 69 people attend. Most of those attendees would probably indicate a higher familiarity and maybe a longer connection with the arena facility. And 75% of the people who attended chose to participate in the tours. So in terms of what we heard, there was a lot of congruence, I would say, across all channels. There seems to be a high understanding around the need to address the building code and snow load issues. There were very, very few comments that questioning a need at all. When it came to replacing the roof, it was seen as a short-term solution that doesn't necessarily address the broader community needs. There were sort of 2 themes when it came to the roof. One was that for the amount that it would cost to replace the roof, that folks felt there wasn't a high enough return on investment for that in terms of just sort of getting a roof and those sort of triggered requirements for building code. And the second was that it was only the roof. And so that we'd be making these investments into the roof itself, but it didn't address any of the other things that could go wrong or may be needed within the facility. There was overall support for planning a new facility, and that came from all of the user groups that we met with in terms of an openness and interest in continuing to have that conversation. Many of the user groups have met the current demand and aren't sure that they can meet future demand with the current facility. The survey and open house, it was a very high majority of folks who felt that planning for a new facility was the preferred option. And a strong theme around a desire that any new facility meets the needs of a greater number of people and highlights a desire for year-round use. So greater emphasis on sort of shoulder and summer season uses, and a greater flexibility overall for activities and amenities that meet more people's recreational needs across the community. The top 3 most important considerations when planning for the future is, again, those more year-round recreational amenities, with the examples being around just sort of general fitness. Climbing wall is a very popular suggestion for a new amenity. Expanding the existing programs, so minor hockey, figure skating, and an interest in having increased dry floor access. So currently, obviously, that's only in the summer months, and a desire to see year round. And the third most important consideration for planning for the future in any option is capital cost. And the top 3 amenities desired in a new facility, number 1 was the rock climbing wall. Second being a walking or running track, came up in a high number of comments. And the third being the curling rink. Cost, as I said, is top of mind of folks. The location of any new facility is also very top of mind. Downtown, central location, walking and accessibility to any new facility are important. When it comes to costs, I mean, no big surprises, but sort of everything from potential tax impacts on other infrastructure projects in the city, wanting confidence in the accuracy of capital estimates, wanting some certainty that the costs weren't going to increase greater than what's approved. Across the board, it was important that investments address accessibility, and whether that was physical access within the within the facility for those who may have physical impairments, or even audio-visual or sound system sort of examples, but also gender and female washrooms, dedicated washroom spaces across the board, all users, and very high in the survey as well. In terms of what folks really appreciate and value about the current facility, a lot of comments around the history, a lot of personal anecdotal examples of the role that the arena has played, in their lives, in the community, the character that you feel, sort of the aesthetic or the atmosphere within the arena. Some attributed to that to the truss system or the two-sided seating, the viewing areas, and how you come in off the main ground level and look down, all sort of unique attributes associated with the facility. And the seating on both sides of the arena is highly valued. Many comments just about the ambiance that provides to spectators and to players in some cases. The connection around social connectedness and a place where people can come together. Also, obviously, over 60 years, generations that have come and used the facility. Of all the user groups we met with, I think virtually all of them are experiencing growth or at a capacity and may not be able to meet growing demand with the current facility. And many expressed interest in increased access to ice time, some suggestions of a second sheet or a practice sheet of ice, dry floor, and improved amenities. So again, reinforcing the change rooms, female washrooms, and accessibility. Many of the several current user groups expressed that any loss of a winter season due to renovations or roof replacement would have a significant impact on their membership, in some cases a devastating impact to their continuity as associations. The curling club noted that obviously they can't exist without a curling rink included in any facility. And so a very high interest in seeing a curling club included in any new facility, and a strong interest in participating and helping to make that happen. And several stakeholder groups expressed interest in participating in the process and partnering in opportunities to attract external funding, whether that be fundraising or recreational grants through their various sectors. A very high interest in collaboration. And I think I was very struck by the comments. There was, everyone could express their own interests in the arena and the curling club itself. But I think what's notable is that it was very clear that there's a high community interest. So what may work for myself is one example I can offer you, but I also think it's important that we consider X and Y. And that kind of came through all of the stakeholder meetings, as well as through the survey in terms of what's good for the community's interest. In terms of looking to the future and future phases, preferred ways for keeping people informed, Facebook, local newspaper, and e-newsletter or electronic newsletter from the city were seen as those top tools for reaching folks. And the next steps, as they've been outlined in the process, obviously we've completed the planning for phase 1 and the active engagement phase. Now this information will be provided back, obviously, to the city and to the community so that they can see what input was collected and how that's informing the next steps, and how their input is influencing your decision making as you go forward. And so I'm not sure if option development is necessarily the right term, and I won't put words in Lori's mouth, but over to Lori and team for sort of that next technical phase of work, and indicating further public consultation after that technical work has completed. And with that, I would be happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Katie. Any further comment, Ms. Donato, before we ask questions?
No, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. Council, any questions for Ms. Hamilton regarding the arena and moving forward? Councilor Cherry, you want your own dressing room, is that it?
No, not a chance.
Can name one.
Definitely not. Good trash.
Councilor Palmer, any questions? You've turned your camera
on. Yeah, I was just putting it back on. I'm pleased with the report. I'm more pleased with the sort of a very rational approach from the community as a whole, that they're looking at that theme of looking out for the holistic community needs and not so much on self-interest. And I think that is something that is really outstanding for Revelstoke. And as we move ahead, any concerns aren't coming out as negativity, but more as how do we do a good job? And just a real thank you to everybody in the community that has contributed to the dialogue to this point. Thank you, Mayor Souls.
Thank you, Councilor Palmer. Councilor Orlando, you have your hand up.
Your worship, thank you. Through the chair, I have a few questions for the presenter. I'll just sort of group them together. In the report, first question, is there a breakdown of how many people submitted their comments physically in person at one of the open houses, and how many submitted online, or were they all done online? I know the report noted that 389 people responded to a survey. So that's question number one. Question number two is it mentioned that I believe the figure was around 99% of people who completed the survey were local, and I'm wondering if how that was determined. I have further questions, but I guess I'll just group those two together.
Great, thank you. Ms. Hamilton?
Thank you. Through the mayor, there were 392 respondents to the survey, and that was the question that was posed within the survey in terms of asking respondents to self-identify as to where they resided, and 99% indicated that they reside in Revelstoke, and I think, as I indicated, only 3 indicated that they didn't. In terms of attendees at the open house, we had 69 people attend. We don't track whether every individual provides comment at that, but I observed high engagement by the 69 that did attend. I'd have to go back and confirm all of the tallied comments that we had from the open house itself, but all of the comments have been themed and are distinctly presented within the report as having come from the open house. And I think it's important for council that you can see how different inputs came through different channels. So as you review the report, you should be able to discreetly see what came from the online survey itself, what came from the open house, what came from the engagement within the community center, and what came from the stakeholder meetings.
Great, thank you. Councilor Orlando, follow-up?
Your worship, yes, thank you. And just for clarity, to follow up on that question, so all of the responses came through the Talk Revelstoke. I guess my question is, did everyone have the same questions? I don't know if there were actual paper surveys that people sat down and wrote and filled out. So were these all, those 392, these were all people who submitted online?
Yeah, thank you. Through the mayor, 392 participants in the online survey. There were an additional 69 individuals that attended the open house, and you're correct. The questions that were posed to the community were consistent across all opportunities. So the same questions that were included in the survey were posed at the open house, and attendees could provide written comment on each of those questions on interactive display boards. And we do interactive display boards in those settings because it's helpful in encouraging further dialogue from all of the attendees. It's often helpful for folks who are there to see what the other comments are and build upon those. And so there was written comments collected from the open house. And then the same questions were virtually posed to the stakeholder groups as well. And they're all outlined under the key topics that we just went through in the earlier in the presentation, as well as you can see the same information presented within the display boards as an appendices to the report.
Great, thank you. Councilor Orlando, more?
Your worship, yes, I've got a few questions. So previously, when this consultation process was, when council was deciding on opting to go forward with it, there was an indication that there would be some sort of a tool to clarify people's place of residence, such as using, I believe it was mentioned, using some sort of, filtering or double checking that people aren't, filling out the form twice, that kind of thing. So it's my understanding, I was just double checking, are we just relying 100% on people on good faith that people were just indicating their place of residence, and that's what we're basing this on.
Hamilton?
Through your mayor, through the mayor, I would have to confirm, we don't manage the platform ourselves. That's done through the city, but typically there are limitations in terms of IP address and whatnot within the tool itself. I can also, the platform is by registration. The Bang the Table platform are very common across local government, and it is done by registration. So you do need to provide information to register, and you have the ability to respond as one registrant when you participate. I think I can also reinforce that in terms of the attendees at the open house, the 69 folks who attended, I would infer from observing the couple of hours of interaction is that I think staff and council were quite familiar with many of the folks who attended. I don't think there was any question as to where they lived or whether they were from Revelstoke. So I think you have that added assurance from the folks who attended in person, and clearly the stakeholder groups that we met with, all 25 people were from Revelstoke as well.
Great, thank you. Councillor Orlando?
Your worship, thank you. I do have comments further, but I think it would be more appropriate after the resolutions are read.
Okay. All right. Any other questions before we move on? Councillor Cherry.
Thanks, your worship. I just have a quick question through the chair to Ms. Hamilton. Under question 12, there were 63 respondents that labeled other. By chance, do you know what the other options that they listed were?
I do. Thank you, Councillor Cherry. The predominantly the top answer in that question was related to increased dry floor use, with specific interest in additional opportunities for soccer being number one, with other examples being baseball, football, and racket sports. So largely dry floor uses that currently may have an unmet need or a desire to see an increased need within the community.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
All right, does someone else want to make comment before I ask for the motion to be put on the table?
Your worship, if I may.
Yes, please.
Your worship, through the chair to Ms. Hamilton, just following up on the question from Councillor Cherry, that data, such as the responses from all of the individuals, such as on things they'd like to see, is that available to council to parse through?
Through the mayor, I think we can make any information available to council, and I'll defer to Lori in terms of what can be provided. It is hundreds of pages of commentary, so it's probably simpler if there are specific questions that you'd like to dig into the data a little bit further. And I don't know about any privacy considerations or that in terms of sharing information, but I'll defer to Ms. Donato about that. We can certainly provide a breakdown in terms of theming for questions like other amenities.
Ms. Donato, any comment?
Through your worship, maybe just looking for some clarity on, is there a specific question that Councillor Orlando would like to see a breakdown on?
Councillor Orlando.
Your worship, yeah, I mean, not very specific, but I think just having a look at the responses helps understand maybe some of the details that don't come through on the summary, such as things like what Councillor Cherry was asking about regarding other things that people want to see, like indoor sports fields or indoor soccer, that kind of thing. And without seeing those responses, I may not have all of the know what I'm looking for until I see them. So I guess, yeah, I mean, even if it is hundreds of pages, without the names on it, it would be great to have a look at that data.
Okay, that I'm sure we could probably do something. I can discuss that with Miss Floyd. Most likely we could just retract the names of the individuals or the user IDs and probably pull together some type of report that could be circulated to council.
Great. All right, thank you. Okay, let's.
That would be great. Thank you.
Get this motion on the table. Someone want to put it, Councillor Cherry?
I move that the summary engagement report for the future of the Revelstoke Forum Curling Club project prepared by Katie Hamilton, Tavola Strategy Group, dated June 2023 be received.
Seconder for that motion, please. Councillor Stakenhurst. Any further discussion or questions regarding this motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? No, motion's carried. Item number 2. Someone want to put that on for me? Councillor Lucien.
I move that staff report back to council on September 26, 2023 with a report that outlines location options based on footprint requirements and prepare terms of reference for a steering committee that will work with all affected stakeholders.
Seconder for the motion, please. Councillor Cherry. Any discussion on this motion?
Mayor Souls.
Go ahead, Councillor Palmer.
Yeah, I just have a question for staff from Ms. Donato. So it's a very specific timeline, September for summer right now, then September ramps up really quickly. And just is that time frame achievable? Yeah, just a comment, I guess, a question on that. I'm just wanting to make sure that we're not bound too tight here.
Mr. Donato?
Through your worship, I think we can make that work. Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Councillor Orlando.
Sorry, Your Worship, just trying to unmute there. Thank you. I just, sorry, had my technical issue here. Yeah, my question is related to this one is through the chair to staff. This report is intended to indicate location options based on footprint requirements. My question is that you know, how will staff account for variances in footprint requirements? So, for example, it's not clear to me that a decision has been made on the size of the arena or what facilities will be included with it, and all of that I think will determine how much how big it needs to be and how much parking, for example, there needs to be. So my question is, given that you know, whether it's a large facility, a small facility, whether curling is included or not, a climbing gym, other facilities, walking track, etc., how will staff sort of approach those unknowns in preparing this report?
Mr. Nato, comment?
Through your worship, the intent was to provide a range for footprint requirements. So starting with the minimum to a maximum based on an overview of the properties that we have within the community. So we have a little working group amongst staff that would probably, the way I envision it, we'll be looking at a map to see where there are large chunks of land available and start evaluating those based on a range, a footprint range that would work for a multiplex facility. It is a little bit tricky without having the uses entirely fleshed out, but I think there's a lot of information out there in terms of adequate footprints for multiplex facilities that we could start building options out for locations, because I think it's really important to start having that conversation about where this type of facility would go. I mean, the community is asking, and I think we need to flesh out some options before we can move into a design phase.
Good, and that'll come, that minimum maximum will come, and then based upon what you've already heard from community members, and then council can weigh in as to what they've heard as well. Any further comment, Councillor Orlando, on that?
Your worship, thank you. And through the chair, a question again for staff. I'm wondering what the process is going to be regarding probably the one of the most challenging decisions here is what are we designing and what are we including in this facility, such as ice surface, gym, climbing, other facilities, walking track, other things indicated. So my question is, what is the identified process for making those tough decisions, and how will that work?
Mr. Neto?
Through your worship. So we don't have that fleshed out yet. So that will come once we hire a project team to actually work on the design concepts and to get us through to the next phases, which is not what I'm proposing right now. The thought process is that we would work with a steering committee to help guide some of those decision-making processes that involve the location as well. And then once we get to that stage with the steering committee and locations fleshed out, we'll come back to council with a recommendation to engage with a project team to help get us through those next steps and have those conversations with the community again in phase 2 of community consultation.
Follow up, Councillor?
Yes, your worship, thank you. My question is related through the chair in terms of the process of identifying any potential locations. I'm wondering what steps staff have taken so far. And I guess my question is based on the premise that there isn't many suitable spaces left in Revelstoke for what is likely to be a pretty big footprint, whether it's a bigger or smaller facility.
And so I just want to kind of get to the point here. I think if they bring something forward at that point, that question can be asked as to what the process, what the reason is for that sort of thing. But Mr. Neto, do you want to follow up? Do you have any comment regarding Councillor Orlando's question?
Yes, your worship. So we've identified some site criteria that we're going to evaluate potential locations against. And we've got a land inventory already completed, which we will review as a group. We're going to initiate that process probably in the next week. So we should be able to report back to council in September.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Orlando?
Yeah, your worship, thank you.
All right. Okay, so any further questions on this motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? No, motion is approved. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Hamilton. Thank you, Mr. Neto. And thank you to all the staff that's worked on this. It's great to see this coming forward for some consultation decisions. So thank you for that. All right, let's move on to item G, approval to purchase 30 self-contained breathing apparatus tanks and all that sort of stuff. Fire Chief DeRossi is here. Do you want to make any comment? I guess it's time for us to update equipment. That's why we're asking for this. Is that correct?
No formal presentation, but happy to answer any questions council may have.
Great. All right, let's put this motion on the table and then we can ask questions. Councillor Staples.
Move that the fire chief be approved to purchase 30 self-contained breathing apparatus in the amount of Canadian 483,967.05, including GST, in accordance with the city's financial plan for 2023, and that the mayor and chief administration officer are authorized on behalf of the city of Revelstoke to enter into a purchase agreement for said self-contained breathing apparatus with Rocky Mountain Phoenix Incorporated.
Seconder for the motion, please. Councillor Devlin. Any further discussion on this motion? Councillor Staples.
Just a quick comment. This is approved through grant, and that's great. Maybe my only concern is that in 20 years, when these are needing to be replaced, that grant may not be available. And then we're going to have a huge order of SCBA's to be replaced again. $500,000 right now, 20 years from now, let's call it $1 million. So that's just my only concern. It would have been nice to maybe stagger this out so we can kind of alternate our purchases. That's just my thought.
No, I appreciate that comment. And then for Chief DeRose, that we're doing this because that's what's happened in the past, is that they're already due and we need to do that. So probably somewhere along the line, we'll have to pinch our pennies or save them in the piggy bank or whatever so that we have money moving forward. Any comment?
I guess, Your Worship, so that concern has come across my table as well. So what we're looking at, we're fortunate to have the Restart grant that proposed by Ms. Work. So we have looked at putting this into a reserve contribution for the next 15 years so that the money to purchase them is accumulated over the years. I don't know if Ms. Moore is with us still or has a comment on that.
Any further comment, Ms. Moore, regarding putting our pennies aside for the future?
Through your worship, these are funded from Restart funds from the province, which is the budget line item is $500,000. And sorry, do you mind just repeating that previous question that you asked?
It's about saving for the future, that we'll put some money aside so that when we go to repurchase these, we'll have some money in reserve. Is that correct?
That's correct. So my understanding is this equipment lasts 15 years. And since we're purchasing them all this year with Restart funds, we will be planning to repurchase them at 15 years from now in the long-term financial plan.
All right, great, thank you. Councillor Staplener, further follow-up.
One last question through the chair. In regards to annual maintenance, I think on one of the contracts, annual maintenance was included. It's my understanding that self-contained breathing apparatuses need to be tested every 5 years, if I remember correctly.
Hybrid testing?
Yeah, and I'd like to know how much that would cost just moving forward.
Chief, comment, do you know cost?
Your Worship, so the question about the annual flow testing, it's called flow testing, that's an annual thing. The vendor in question will provide that at no charge for the first year. And then currently it's running at $100 per unit for additional years. And then that's going to change with that. It's the air cylinders that run on a 5-year hydrostat test. And these, in Canada, those cylinders have a 15-year lifespan as well. So maybe 3 initial tests and then 2 midterm tests. And those run about $50 to $60 each so far. That's in our operational O&M budget.
Follow-up, Council?
No, thank you, Your Worship. Appreciate that, Bill.
Councillor Cherry.
Thanks, Your Worship. Through the chair to whoever could answer this, I do understand this went out for tender. I'm curious if there's any savings through economy of scale, purchasing 30 at once versus.
Comment, Chief DeRose, are we getting a discount because we're buying 30?
Yes, we are.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. All right, any other comments from council? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? No, motion's carried. Thank you. All right. Let's move on to communications. Strategic priorities chart. So, Mr. Parliament, you're up.
Okay, just a couple of quick notes. I have completed under CAO strategies. I have completed my lunch series with all union staff. 9 meetings spread over the month of June where I met with union staff to listen to some of their concerns and questions. A lot of it had to do with just the priorities of council, some clarity. There was no discussion, of course, on bargaining. That's a separate process that's going on this year. But I heard a lot of very interesting stuff about the corporate culture and employer choice, et cetera, et cetera. So that's concluded. I will be providing a report with more details on that So that's complete, and we also, of course, under infrastructure planning, wrapping up the policy to protect residents in mobile homes. And also looking for some more action on the BioHeat Summit on RCEC. One of the reasons we brought RCFC to today's meeting is to make some recommendations, because they also have an interest in RCEC, but making recommendations to make RCEC more viable. So we're going to be working on that. So for that, there's going to be more green items that come up in this priorities chart, and try to knock off some of these priorities as we move forward. I also got an update on the Jordan River Williamson Lake stuff that will be on the next council meeting under the now priorities, and some of the work that staff's been doing on that. Thank you.
Great. All right. Thank you, Mr. Parliament. Any comments or questions for Mr. Parliament? Seeing none, thank you again. Appreciate that. Ms. Delaselle, do we have any questions from the press?
No questions from the press, your worship.
All right, thank you. All right, council, I would like to go, have someone make a motion to go in camera pursuant to section 90.1K of the community charter. Someone want to make that motion? Councillor Stapener, seconded by Councillor Devlin. All in favor? Motion's carried. We'll go in camera. We'll take a 5-minute break and come back. Thank you.
Precious pretty little legs.
Matt, would you mind muting?